I don't want no oil, a spoil in my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things, a-creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes!
Good morning, Toledo, and good morning, Bowling Green. Good afternoon, Columbus, and hello to everyone on the internet, wherever and whenever you are. My name is Joe DeMare. I'm here with my wonderful co-host,
Rebecca Wood.
Yes, and together, Rebecca and I will be bringing you an incredible hour of radio called For a Green Future. For a Green Future is a show where we talk about ecology and the environment. And we talk about them in the ways that they affect you, your wealth, your health, your happiness, the wealth and health and happiness of your friends and your family, and the butterflies that are hanging out as eggs right now, and the birds that will eventually eat those butterflies, and the fish in the sea, and the everybody and everything, basically, because right now we are all together on this wonderful little planet called Earth. And we've got a good show for you today. We got a little bit of a late start, but we're going to make up for that. And we're going to just chat for the next little while. And then I'm going to talk about, just this past week, I took a big old trip down to D.C., and I saw a bunch of things and did a bunch of things that, from an eco perspective, I'm going to share with you. And then we'll hear from our advertisers and sponsors. And then Rebecca will be at the mic. And Rebecca, what are you going to talk about this week?
I am going to talk about codfish.
Codfish, okay. All right. And then it'll be ecological news. And hopefully at some point we will hear from you folks, because this is a call-in show. We do it live so that you can call in and share your concerns or your interests in all things ecological or environmental. Just call 877-909-1007, and we'll get you right on the air. So yesterday was solstice. It was the shortest day of the year. Happy solstice, everybody. And it's a time of, historically, this is actually, even though it's the shortest day of the year, it's actually a time of hope and renewal, because the days start getting longer after this. And so back in the day, people would spend solstice night. They would have big bonfires going all night long, and they would be doing it so that they could, make sure that the day stopped getting shorter, and then they'd have the dawn come, and everybody would cheer, and it would be this really cool thing. And so it's a good attitude to have now. So even though we're coming up into the colder weather, the coldest part of winter is not here yet. The shortest day is already done. And at this point, so today particularly was actually a little bit below average. It was about 8 degrees below average today. And it was that kind of cold weather, down in the teens, where you could see the great big billows of steam and smoke coming off of both the Davis-Besse nuclear power plant and the refineries in the east side of Toledo there. And it's just, every time I drive it, a lot of times that energy infrastructure stuff, you don't see it, you don't think about it. But on a day like today, when it's making these huge billowing clouds that are going right up, thousands of feet in the air because it's so cold, it just reminds us that we we have the wrong energy systems, folks. We're not supposed to be seeing these huge billowing clouds of stuff. If we had wind and sun, solar and wind power and geothermal power, you wouldn't have all those emissions, which are, as we know, warming the globe up. So even though today is a little bit cold, a little bit below average, it's still, that doesn't mean global warming has decided not to happen. It's still well in force, and that's also shown by the fact that right now the lakes are pretty much ice-free. Now, some of the very shallow bays have some ice on them, but for the most part, the lake temperatures are well above average, and so we're coming into winter, because it's officially winter now, with ice-free lakes. And every time we do something like that, like normally what we should have right now is the ground should be all white with snow, the lake should be frozen over and white and all reflecting the heat back out into space. But because the lakes are dark and a lot of the ground actually still green, and green is actually the most effective color for absorbing heat. A lot of people don't know that. They think black is, but green actually absorbs energy more effectively. So the ground is being warmed even though it's cold right now, which means we start this winter at a higher point in terms of temperature and energy than we have last winter. And so this means that going into the rest of the year, we're going to already starting with more energy. And so that creates what does it create, Rebecca?
A positive feedback loop.
Correct. Once again, the positive feedback loop. So global warming is still here, folks, even though it's cold today. But have some hot chocolate, say nice things to your friends and family, because this is also the time of year where people kind of pull together if they want to make it through the winter together. So
everybody's very sad.
Yeah, well, yeah. Oh, you mean the seasonal affective disorder kind of sad?
Yeah, probably. I don't know. Just a lot of people are sort of glum around the holidays in my Facebook feed right now.
All right, so we have some responsibility to cheer each other up there.
Yes.
Go give some season's greetings to somebody.
Yep.
So, all right. Well, as I said, this past week was kind of a intense week for me because I took a trip down to D.C. I actually went and put 4 days in as a volunteer with an organization that I've followed and supported for many years, and we've had guests from NIRS on the show, Nuclear Information Resource Service.
That we have.
Yes, and it's a really worthy organization, and they're moving their offices, and so they need help, like going through their old files and packing stuff up in boxes and stuff. Just grunt work, which I could do grunt work.
Totally.
Yeah, so I went down and helped them out, and it was an interesting experience. It's kind of interesting going back over, as we were going through all these old files, we were going back over like old battles and things that they had won, and some of them were really, really important victories that really helped prevent a lot of nuclear contamination from happening in the world. We kind of forget, nukes are so expensive, and business-wise, they're such a bad decision. So there haven't been, there's hardly been any new nukes in the U.S. The Vocal plants are the first ones in a quarter century, and we kind of think of it because of economic grounds, because they're such a bad investment. They cost many billions of dollars. They make the most expensive electricity in human history. But what we also forget is that the organizations and the volunteers, the citizens, play a big role in preventing those bad economic decisions from becoming bad realities. And NIRS over the decades has stopped a lot of nuclear plants and prevented a lot of contamination from things like radioactive wastes getting put into recycling and just melted into, like they wanted to take recycled metal, really hot meaning highly radioactive metals, out of nuclear plants and just toss it into the waste stream so that it would get melted and recycled and made into, whatever, pens, iPhones, girders for your buildings. And
spiffy.
Yeah, there was a big push for that for decades. And organizations like NIRS had to keep coming to DC, showing up at hearings and saying, look, if you put radioactive stuff into your metals will be radioactive. It doesn't go away because you've melted it and changed its shape.
There's an entire genre of morbid YouTube videos about this wealthy guy who just took some kind of radiation pills in the 1800s or early 1900s as a health measure, and it made him feel really great right up to the point where his entire lower jaw fell off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They'd show pictures. It's really not good.
Yeah, that I believe that fellow was he was talked about in the book Radium Girls, and he was actually a multimillionaire who just bought the hype. The hype was, it's full of energy, right? Radioactive stuff's full of energy.
Technically,
so if you drink it and you eat it, then you'll be full of energy too. But
so is the third rail in the subway system, full of energy, lots and lots of energy.
Right, and of course, what they discovered was that it actually dissolves you from the inside, all that energy. So, that's kind of the nuclear industry in a nutshell, really.
Yeah, really.
They keep promising you power, but if you take the power, you kind of end up melted. So, kind of like those guys in the Raiders of the Lost Ark. But anyway, another old thing that I came across while I was helping them move all their files, they had a little file on pro-nuclear propaganda. And I found this coloring book from 1993, and it was called The Atoms Family, Atoms, and they had Mama Atom and Papa Atom, and boy Atom and girl Atom, their son Adam and daughter Adam, and they
atoms are binary apparently.
Yeah, they were very binary, right? And it was
little
funny.
bows in their hair.
Well, exactly. Have you seen this thing? Maybe that triggered a memory. That's how you told the boy Adam from the girl Adam.
Right.
The girl Adams had the bows on top, and the boy Adams had the bow on the bottom.
Of course.
Because like a bow tie. So it was like, anyway.
Just like in nature with all the animals.
Anyway, this wonderful, happy thing showed the atoms going through all their daily routines, and some atoms are radioactive and some atoms are not, but they're all nice because they're all just atoms and you don't have to worry about them and blah blah blah. So, and I was realizing that this was put out in 1993, distributed to school libraries all over the country, and I realized that those children who got propagandized by this coloring book at that age, those are the adults now. That are being told that nukes are the answer to everything. They're the answer to the global warming. They're the answer to, they'll provide all the power we need for these wonderful data centers that are going to put us all out of work. And so a lot of them, they were, as children, this was their first introduction to nuclear power and nuclear energy. And a lot of them are adults now, and they've never heard the other side of the story. They never, most people have no idea about the Radium Girls or the poor people down in Piketon that have double Ohio's cancer rate, or the people downwind of 3 Mile Island who have the highest cancer rate in the country, literally. They don't hear that. All they hear about is Bill Gates and how wonderful he is because he goes out on all the talk shows to saying how nukes are the future, and all these news stories about all these big companies that have made agreements to buy nuclear power to run this data center or that factory, even though those nuclear plants don't exist. It's all fantasy at this point. But it's very difficult to expect people that has been their lived experience, that they're from childhood, they've been told that nuclear is wonderful. And they've seen the happy pictures of the Atom family playing in the playground, and it's hard to break through that with the information that these radioactive atoms, they get incorporated up into the ecosphere, they get into your bodies, they get into the bodies of the plants and the animals, and in there they damage them, they explode. Once they get in, they explode and cause mutations and cancers and sometimes outright kill. And so that's what we're up against. And they've been at it for a long time. Propaganda, the pro-nuclear propaganda didn't start in 93. It started all the way back in 58 when Eisenhower gave his big Atoms for Peace speech at the United Nations to try to tell people that, who were scared of being blown to bits by atomic bombs, it's not all bad. Look, we'll give you electric toothbrushes and stuff. And so
Spiffy.
the propaganda has been going the whole time. But what happened after 3 Mile Island is that people, ordinary citizens like you and me, started actually looking at it and looking at the information they were being given and double checking the government on these things, and the nuclear technicians and the scientists that were claiming nukes were wonderful. And once you actually look at the reality of it, you realize it's terrible. It's this huge scam.
Yep.
And that fueled huge protests. There were concerts that drew tens of thousands of people. That's when organizations like NIRS were created, once people threw off the propaganda. The problem is, of course, that whole generation is now aging out. And the young people, like the ones who were given this coloring book in 1993, haven't come forward because they haven't been given the opportunity. They haven't. Fukushima has been, that was the disaster where 3 nuclear power plants melted down, put the lie to the whole industry that claimed for decades nukes couldn't melt down. And that should have been the death knell for the nuclear industry. And in a lot of places it was. Nuclear plant orders were canceled by the hundreds, and it looked like the industry was going away. But what's happened since then is Fukushima has been all but ignored, and people don't talk about it anymore. And so that generation, which should have learned about the dangers of it, was denied that information, and now we're playing catch up. So, but we've got to continue to play catch up. We have to catch up, frankly, because we need to switch to solar and wind and get away from nukes as fast as possible. And we have some very upbeat stories in the environmental news section that's going to talk more about that. So something to look forward to there. Just one more thing about my time at NIRS. They let me sit in on, there was a NRC had a Zoom meeting because one of the pieces of propaganda that the nuclear industry has long had has been these short videos of nuclear waste containers on train cars and on truck beds being crashed into things, right? You might have seen them, like they put a nuclear waste container on a rocket sled and smashed it into a brick wall. And then they had another nuclear container that they set on fire, and they burned to fire for 90 minutes. And those things are really outdated because the design of those casks that they used, because these short little videos are from the 1970s, and they discovered that those designs had really fatal flaws. Once they actually tested them beyond this show thing, they realized.
You mean literally, actually fatal, not just
fatal for anybody nearby if they were in an actual accident. Right.
Fatal as in people die.
And one of the most famous is that the NRC's requirement is that they withstand a 90-minute fire. And so the one they show you in the video did withstand a 90-minute fire. But what they don't tell you is at minute 95, all the seals melted.
Oh, my.
And if there had been any nuclear waste in there, it would have all poured out. But so they're going to redo. The NRC is planning to do an updated meme here where they crash nuclear power or nuclear waste containers into stuff. And so we were in this Zoom call, and we thought, a lot of the people on it thought, well, these are all, like industry watchdogs and stuff, thought they were going to be talking about the containers themselves and like how they've improved the design and, how they're much safer now or whatever. No, what they were asking about, the reason they wanted input from the public was they wanted to make these videos as persuasive as possible. So they were asking advice on how can we make this thing really impressive and make it a really cool meme that everybody will share and like believe not what the actual safety or substance of the canisters are going to be, but how do we make it look to everybody like these are really, like, they wanted suggestions like what color should the flames be, and
Oh, great.
yeah, and should we have Tom Cruise be the one driving the truck? So it was completely style, appearance over actuality, over reality in terms of safety of these canisters, which we know will be giving off gamma radiation. And one of the few bits of actual information they've calculated, once they have a place to truck all this waste, either an interim storage place or a permanent site, they've already, for what the nuclear waste they've already created, they've calculated it's going to take 10,000 rail trips and 50 years just to truck what we've already created to some sort of permanent repository, which we don't have. And of course, if we create an interim storage place, then it would take 100 years, because first you truck it to the interim and then you truck it to the permanent, and so it would take 20,000 trips and 100 years. But it was just sort of an eye opener. It's how much the policy, how much we've sort of devolved from the point where back in the day, back in the 90s and the 2000s, people still had an influence over the basic decisions, like whether we should do this or not. Now they're looking for input from people just on how can we make this look appealing to you. It's marketing over. It's like we have a really crappy product, but what will get you to buy it?
Right.
And
it was an advertising focus group, is what
exactly
it was.
It was. Yeah, that's exactly what it turned out to be, and it was just a sad commentary on how things have sort of declined. Other than that, it was a really nice trip in terms of I took the train down. I always love it when I get to take the train down, and because you get to drive along. And Amtrak has created this, quote, new route called the Floridian that goes from Chicago to Florida, and it comes through Toledo. It turns south in Cleveland, and goes through Pennsylvania. And we were riding along in Pennsylvania next to this really beautiful creek called Willis Creek. It had rapids and stuff, and a bald eagle came and was flying along the creek right at eye level with the train, and that was just like really the kind of the highlight of my trip there. But as with all train rides, it was very comfortable. I got lots of work done. I actually edited and uploaded last week's show while sitting there on the train. It was very nice. I got to read a book and just sit there and do some thinking because somebody else was doing the driving. And I saw, forests, I saw deers. We did have some delays that were caused because a freight train had some problems ahead of us, and they always prioritize freight over people on the nation's rail lines, which I think is a mistake. But once again, I could heartily recommend train travel as the way to go. And if you can't go by train, get yourself an electric car, go that way. But that's it. That was my trip down to DC that I wanted to talk to you folks about. And if you have any comments or questions, give us a call, 877-909-1007. Okay, now it's time to hear from our advertisers and patrons. And For a Green Future is brought to you by our patrons. And these are wonderful people who've gone to patreon.com. It's Patreon. There they searched for a Green Future. Up popped our Patreon page. They scrolled through and picked a membership level that matched their budget. And every month a little bit comes out of their accounts, comes over to us. And that's the primary way that we fund this show. So we're very, very grateful to our patrons. And we're especially grateful. We got a special one-time Christmas donation from a patron just yesterday, actually. They gave us a nice $200.
Ooh,
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Gosh.
It's a big help there. And if you want to give a Christmas present to For a Green Future, hey, we'll happily accept it. Or a Hanukkah present, or a solstice present, or whatever sort of present you'd like to give us, we'll gratefully accept it. I have to tell you that it's not tax deductible because we're not a nonprofit. And the reason we're not a nonprofit is I get to say all sorts of political stuff like I just did because nonprofits are gagged in that way. But thank you once again to our patrons. And if you have a business, this be a very good show for you to advertise on if your business is at all environmentally or ecologically related. So give us a call. You can call or text anytime, 419-973-5841, or send us an email, joe@joedemare4agreenfuture.org, or just check out our website, Joe DeMare, DEMARE, FOR, agreenfuture.org. All right, Rebecca, that brings us to you. And what are we talking about this week?
All right. Well, as many may know, this coming Tuesday is New Year's is Christmas Eve.
Christmas Eve,
right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, and one of the things I like about doing my short segment here is that I, as well as listening to Joe, is that I get to learn new things, which tickles my brain good. Even though I have a terrible, terrible memory anymore, so I'm kind of, still loading books into a burning library, basically. But what else? You got to pass the time somehow. Anyway, one of the things that I learned this week is that there is a Southern Italian custom of having fish on Christmas Eve. See what I mean? See what I'm talking about? But anyway, yeah, it's connected with the Vigil of the Birth, and apparently one of the traditional fish that they have for this a lot, or that's popular anyway, is cod. I believe salted cod specifically. Was that called a bacala? It's in Italian.
I'm not sure.
Baccala.
Yeah, that would be pronounced bacala.
Bacala. Okay. Yeah. So I'm calling this segment. We fish you a moray codmus.
Okay.
Or a mare codmus.
Moray codmus. Okay.
Because it's from the sea. Like Josie.
Oh, mare. Yeah. Oh, de mare. Yeah, of course. Certo.
There we go.
Certamente.
I put, when you have to explain your jokes too much, it's not good. But anyway, so there's this thing, the Feast of the Seven Fishes. It's based on the Catholic tradition of not eating meat on Christmas Eve. So fish is the popular alternative. And it's connected with the Vigil of the Birth for Jesus. And the number 7 is really not remotely hard and fast. Apparently, in Italy, it was just kind of like, New Year's Eve, fish. We're gonna eat a lot of fish. If we just have one fish, we'll eat the one, and if we have a whole bunch, we'll eat them.
Okay.
So, but it's not even a rule in America for Italian Americans. But usually includes soup, pasta, appetizers, and entrees, and sides of potatoes or leeks are popular apparently.
Mm-hmm.
A light dessert maybe. The first reference to this as being called the Feast of the Seven Fishes is in 1983 in the Philadelphia Inquirer.
Really?
That's and we think people just liked how it sounds. The number 7. People like the number 7 a lot, and there's various things in Christian theology that have to do with 7. So it just kind of caught on there, and actual Italians don't count the dishes at all, though. And cod. Thought I'd talk a little bit about cod. It's been eaten in Europe since the Stone Age. It has mildly flavored, moist white meat, which people like. It's basically several species in the genus Gadus, Gadus. Which is a demersal fish. I didn't know anything about this. It basically just means a bottom feeder, which means you're mostly going to catch it on the coasts, because that's where you've got like a rich environment on the bottom, and
it's shallow enough to get at them.
And you can get at them. And apparently, some fish are casually referred to as cod, which are not actually in this genus. There's Alaskan pollock, which is called cod, which is. Oh, no, it's not called cod. It is in that genus, but it's not called a cod.
Oh.
No one knows. Anyway, so, typical of this holiday, there are no cod in the Mediterranean. Well, there was one in 2009, and it made international news. So, that it's not really something a lot of people. So it's like St. Patrick's Day. It's really not much of a thing in Ireland, or if it is, it's because they learned this from Irish or Americans. Get tourist money. So, but yeah, it comes. There's Atlantic, Pacific, and Baltic cod. And some threats to it would include overfishing, climate change, and ocean acidification, because their offspring have to have just the right temperature and what's not to grow. The major benefit of cod is that they regulate the prey populations, being a predator, and problem associated with them, which is not really the fault of the cod, is that capture and transport can contribute to climate change through gas and also through coolant leaks.
Okay.
So, yeah, if you do it on a mass scale, there can be problems associated. And I found a zinger fact.
Okay. Ready.
In addition to both the roe and milt of their of codfish are considered to be a delicacy, and I did not know this. Roe is well, I did know. Roe is fish eggs,
Right.
and milt is the other thing that you need to make a baby fish, and besides a fish egg.
That's the daddy contribution.
Yes.
Okay, daddy fish.
So if anyone offers you milt, that is what in fact they are offering you, just so you know.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Rebecca. Yeah. I grew up in an Italian household, and we did have fish, but yeah, we never called it Feast of the Seven Fishes. But when I heard it, I assumed that was something that like just my family had never got a hold of, never got passed on. But but now it just showed up at 83. Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
yeah.
Well, that just goes to show you. All right. Well, thanks, Rebecca.
You're welcome.
And so still have a line open. And what do you guys do for Christmas food wise? Do you have like some special fish thing or some other sort of thing that you have Christmas wise? Because food is really it's the intersection between the environment and our everyday lives
Very much so,
for a
yeah.
lot of people. What's available to eat, what you can eat, what's gone, that is an important connection. So, yeah, tell us about your favorite Christmas meal, 877-909-1007. All right, that brings us to ecological news, and here we go. First story, this is not good news. This is in phys.org on December 11th, and the title is Saltwater Will Taint 77% of Coastal Aquifers by Century's End, Modeling Studies Find. And we've all known, we've all heard over and over again that there's sea level rise is happening because of global warming. But what this study did is it looked at the effect of the rising sea levels on the aquifers next to the coasts. And what it found is that wells will become undrinkable, irrigation water, unusable for irrigation. It's a process called saltwater intrusion. And so the process is that what happens is rain falls on the continents, right? Fresh water, nice drinkable water, gets down into the groundwater, and then the groundwater flows towards the ocean. Now the ocean is sitting there with its undrinkable salt water, and there's a back and forth. There's a pressure battle that happens constantly because this salt water is pushing out, or the fresh water is pushing out, the salt water is pushing in. There's a little bit of a transition zone where they mix a little bit, but it's very thin. It's like a razor thin thing. And as you make the ocean deeper, as you add more water on top of the ocean, that increases the pressure on the salt water underneath. So that gives salt water an advantage. It starts pushing in. And another effect of global warming, of course, is reduced rainfall. And so that reduces the pressure pushing out. And so, like we say, they found that 77% of coastal aquifers are going to be affected by this. The original research was published in Geophysical Research Letters, and they studied 60,000 coastal watersheds around the world. Now, a few places will have actually increased rainfall. So about a little less than 1/4 we'll actually see that the pressure pushing outward increase because those little areas are expected to get more rain. But 3/4 of the globe, 3/4 of those 60,000 will have less rain and have this saltwater intrusion. So not good news, just yet another way that global warming is going to affect us. So another reason to stop using fossil fuels as soon as possible. All right, now on to a story. I did this. I'm looking at this story because I kind of wanted to review the story itself. This is a story that was December 18th at National Public Radio, NPR, and the title is "Scientists Know Our Bodies Are Full of Microplastics. What are they doing to us?" ? And so you would think this story would be all about the health effects of microplastics. And there is a little bit of that in there. But the story is actually 2/3 spin. Basically, the first third of the story is talking about how we don't actually know for sure what any of these plastics are doing. As in, the scientists, the studies haven't been done that can definitively say, this little bit of plastic from this source has caused these cancers in these people.
It's probably not a case of all human beings have been waiting for to become supermen is microplastics, though. I don't think it's like that.
No,
it's something else entirely.
Yeah, it's not like it's going to mutate you into.
We've not been suffering for millennia from a microplastic deficiency or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean it is. It's important to remember this is literally a brand new pollutant that none of us, no organism has had to deal with ever in the history of life on Earth. Mm-hmm. But so the first third of it was that the scientists saying, well, we don't really know. We're doing all these studies, and we're finding the microplastics everywhere. That was part of the first part of this article. They're saying, they find it in literally every human tissue they look at: brain, reproductive organs, muscles, livers. So it's in there.
And seriously, with the link between heavy metals and ADHD and having grown up in the 70s and everything, my life really might have been very different if the environment were cleaner,
Yeah, that's an important thing. Actually, we're going to talk about that in our next story. But this article on NPR, then for one paragraph talks about how all these studies are linking, showing correlations between, they find microplastics in, people who have microplastics in the plaques in their arteries are more likely to have heart attack, stroke, and death. People with inflammatory bowel disease, they find higher levels of microplastics in the bowels of those people than in healthy people. They find high levels of microplastics in people with liver disease. Same with reproductive health, erectile dysfunction, chronic sinusitis, cancer. They find the higher levels of microplastics in all these people with those diseases, but they again emphasized, but that doesn't mean the plastics caused it or contributed to it.
It'd be purely coincidental.
Yeah, right. So the guy, basically the guy is standing over the body with a smoking gun when you walk in the room, but you can't say for sure that he's the one who committed the murder. It's kind of like, can't we go out on a little bit of a limb here? Can't we just, for once, not wait until the effects are completely definitively?
Or, in the criminal courts, circumstantial evidence is absolutely acceptable. If you had motive, means, and opportunity, they don't got to have you on, you don't have to actually shoot someone at the 40-yard line of the Super Bowl.
Right, the eyewitness or the video. Yeah, you could convict somebody on circumstantial evidence, right? So we got plenty of that.
But when it comes to killing people with chemicals, basically, or radiation or whatever, it's but can you, do you actually, did they do it? And you really have to do it in 40-yard line of the Super Bowl at halftime.
Right. And it's really a case of justice delayed equals justice denied, because the longer we wait, the more damage it's going to do. So I was unhappy with NPR's article on that, but at least they passed on the information that is there. They just couched it in so much spin, it was hard to tease it out. Next story, though, it's a good news story, and it goes to your point, Rebecca. The Montana Supreme Court upholds the right to a stable climate system for youngsters. This is December 18th in The Guardian. And the Montana state constitution had a wonderful amendment added to it in 1972 that says that people have a right, a fundamental human right, to clean and healthful environments. And so what happened, they had a case, these children brought a case. There were 16 young people, ages 5 to 22. They brought a case against the state government called Held versus Montana. They filed it back in June of 23. And they say that a stable climate system is an essential part of a clean and healthful environment. I mean, makes sense to me. And so they won in the lower court, but of course the Republican Attorney General of Montana, a fellow named Austin Knudsen, appealed it to the Montana State Supreme Court, and basically said, no, we can have unstable environments. They're perfectly legal, but luckily the state Supreme Court found in favor of the children. Actually, found in favor of the future. And so, with the immediate effect of this is that throughout the Republican-controlled legislature had passed this law that said that environmental regulators in Montana could not consider global warming or the effects of greenhouse gases on global warming in any of their decisions. And they passed a law saying that the environmental regulation had to pretend global warming wasn't happening. And so this decision immediately overturns that law. That law is now gone. And this suit was being brought by a nonprofit called Our Children's Trust. And the chief lawyer for Our Children's Trust makes the point, he made this in court and he makes it in interviews, that as Americans, we're supposed to have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that essentially requires a clean world. That if you don't have a clean environment, you can't have either life or liberty or pursuit of happiness, because it's just physically impossible to be happy when you're sitting in a...
You can't really pursue happiness when you're dead also.
That also makes it very difficult.
As far as we know.
Yes. So hooray for the Montana Supreme Court. Really did a cool thing there, and it makes me think we really need an amendment like that in Ohio's state constitution. We really should get that in there. All right, so now, unfortunately, whipsaw effect. Some bad news. Story in the Reuters, and that is that France adds first nuclear in 25 years to grid. And so this
France. No.
Yes, this
Drop
is
it. Bad France.
Bad France, yes. Mal pays, which means bad country in French.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So Flamanville is a French nuclear plant. It's been under construction.
They have to be smart Alex and make fun of us for being fascists all the time.
Yeah. So,
uncouth fascists at that.
So you're not so perfect yourself.
France. Yeah.
They've been building this nuclear plant since 2006. So 18 years of working on this plant. 12 years late. It was supposed to be done in 6 years. And the budget ended up being quadruple. It cost 13 billion when it was supposed to cost 3 billion euros. The story in Reuters on December 21st, they connected to the grid on Saturday morning. It's a 1.6 gigawatt nuclear power plant. It's the first nuclear power plant that's come online in France since 1999. And not coincidentally, the same day, France's economy's credit rating dropped. And because essentially France's economy is crashing. And
Oopsie.
Yeah, partly because the government is pouring tons of money into stupid projects like this one instead of services for the people that would make the people of France better off. And so the a lot of the pro-nukers have been crowing about the fact that France has been exporting a lot of electricity lately with their nuclear plants, which supply about 3/4 of France's electricity. But the reason they've been able to export so much is that their own industries have collapsed and they no longer need as much power. And so they can sell it for super cheap to other countries because nuclear plants have to run. And so they can't like save the nuclear energy for later when they need it. So they've got to sell it. So, but to put that in context, also yesterday, Saturday, in addition to the, Flamanville's 1.6 gigawatts came on, Germany actually put 100 times as much power onto the grid with wind power. So the day that after 18 years, France puts 1.6 gigawatts on, Germany put 1,020 gigawatts onto the grid just because of wind. It was a windy day.
Wow.
And even tiny little Denmark put 10 times as much power. They put 121 gigawatts onto the grid as opposed to Flamanville's 1.6. And Clean Technica on December 30th reported that Europe is expected to add 110 gigawatts of solar next year. So 100 times as much power as Flamanville just from solar. And, that was up. That's amazingly increased because Europe put 56 gigawatts of solar in 2023, 95 gigawatts in this year, 2024, and now they're going to go up to 110 gigawatts next year. So wind and solar are just growing by leaps and bounds, growing much faster than anybody predicted, which is great. Even the promoters of wind and solar, like moi, wasn't expecting this kind of growth this quickly. So it's definitely a source of hope. And that brings us to our next story, and that is that in 2024, in the United States of America, our very own country, which we love so much, solar and wind overtook coal as an energy source. So for the first time, if you add solar and wind together, they provided 17% of the U.S.'s electricity in 2024. Coal only produced 15%. And so all these Ohio state legislators that are going to the mat for coal and passing these terrible laws like we talked about last week, House Bill 308 that declares coal clean energy if you mix it with wood chips or something, they're wrong. Okay, they're just wrong.
Very incorrect.
They're backing the wrong horse here. They've picked the horse that only has 3 legs, right? The horse that's literally dying on the track. In the United States itself, which is one of the most coal-dependent countries, coal's down to 15%. And in the world, actually, this is according to Ember, they released a report on December 17th, solar provided 593 gigawatt hours of power. Or there's 593 gigawatts, 593 gigawatts of solar were installed. That's up 29% from 2023. So 2024, 593 gigawatts, up a third from just the year before. And again, that's 600 times as much power as that French nuclear plant. 34 economies now around the world have more than 10% of their power from solar. Chile is the leader in having solar-powered economies. They've got 20% of their power just from solar. There's a province in India that gets 33% of its power from solar. That's the Rajasthan. And in May, Rajasthan got 45, almost half their power from solar alone. Batteries are up 80% in 1 year, and 80% of the batteries that are being installed now are lithium iron phosphate, which means they don't need cobalt, they don't need nickel, they don't need those rare metals that you see the memes about the children in the Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo, out in the rivers trying to mine the cobalt by hand. 80% of batteries now no longer need cobalt. And also sodium ions are ramping up, these are batteries that don't even need lithium. And So battery use has increased 136% just from 1922 from 2022 to 2023. And so in Europe, wind and solar also in 2024 passed all fossil fuels. In the U.S., wind and solar passed coal and just about equaled nukes. All right. So this was the year, 2024 was the year that wind and solar caught up with nuclear in the U.S., even though we're the most nuclear country in the world. And even with Biden pushing tens of billions of dollars to try to promote more nuclear, wind and solar, even here, has caught up and is about to pass nuclear power. So there's hope. We're still not there, but we are trending in a lot of ways in the right direction. Coal in the U.S. has been declining steadily, the worst greenhouse gas emitter. In the UK, coal is down to half what it was when it reached its peak. And once again, when I was on this train, I saw over in the East Coast, over in D.C., once we get all the way over there, a lot of the trains there are electric. And so my train, the Floridian, is a diesel because it goes across country and it doesn't have the electric lines. And at one point in the middle of the night, because I traveled all through the night, I actually got up and took a walk. I walked all the way up to the front car, and I was just watching that big, through the windows of the train doors, I was watching the big diesel engine roaring away for a while that was carrying us. But even that transportation doesn't need to be diesel. That could be electric. We could electrify all our train lines. We could be going, pretty much pollution free. We've done it before. I've talked before about how there used to be an electric train line from Toledo down to Cincinnati. And you could still find the poles for that electric line. And they did this back in the first part of the 20th century, in the early 1900s. And if they could do it then, that we could do it better now. So that's it. I want to wish everybody very merry holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah. I hope our Hindu friends had a happy Diwali. I hope our pagan friends had a great solstice there. And I just want to wish everybody happy holidays and Merry Christmas.
It's all about light and love in a time of darkness.
Yeah. And once again, make this the year, make 2025 the year that you personally actually do something to help get us off the global warming, to help get us off the fossil fuel kick. Make this the year you get an electric car, you go ahead and put those solar panels on your house, get some insulation, maybe switch your gas furnace out for geothermal, maybe switch your gas stove out for an electric stove. Just do something, because we've all got to do something. We've all got to pull together on this, because our leaders are either pulling us in the wrong direction, our quote-unquote leaders are trying to pull us backwards, or they're not trying to pull us forward strong enough. So it's up to us, folks. That's it for this show. Thanks so much. This is Joe DeMare.
And Rebecca Wood.
We are signing off.
I don't want no oil, a spoiling my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things a-creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear No nukes.